Okay, so workforce development in DoD, not a new thing, right? And yet we've been talking about it for 3 years a lot, but we've really been talking about it since about 2016 and started the movement. And so back in 2018, the 6 senior military colleges, which are Norwich, the Citadel, Virginia Tech, VMI, University of North Georgia, and Texas A&M, I have to go geographically to do this, got together and said, look, we've got a unique identity, right? As senior military colleges, we have a Title X authority, and we have a culture of service. So students come there, civilian and military, go to these schools, 5 of the 6, civilian and military. They come to the school and they want to serve. And some of them want to serve in Department of Defense, but they don't even know what's out there. And they didn't know the realm of the possible. And they didn't know that there was an amazing, within cyber, just this amazing group of work roles and positions and organizations, because what they knew was movies, right? It's like those who work in the intel community. When you have cool movies, that's where the kids want to go, all right? It's the same with DoD. They knew about the uniform side of it, but they really didn't know the opportunities. So what we did was we got together the 6 schools, first time we've really worked together on a program, and we wrote language into the National Defense Authorization Act. Nobody asked us to do it, but a lot of us were retired military and we understood what the gap was and what the need was. And so working with those stakeholders who you see on the top there, DoD CIO from the beginning a stakeholder, NSA and Cyber Command, we said, okay, here's our idea. We want to try it. We'll do a pilot project. We'll go out and get the money. Private citizen now, I can go up and talk to my senators and congressmen and say, hey, we want to try this. Let us do a pilot program. If we can show a clear return on investment for Department of Defense and get more of our students and our graduates to want to join the DoD workforce as civilians or military, let us show it. And give us 5 or 6 years. Started out 5, COVID, we got an extra year. We're starting our 6th year now of our program. So what's our program? It's interesting because, and I know you heard from Rags earlier, and Rags was one of the original 3 partners. Myself, I was at University of North Georgia at the time, my partner at Norwich, and then our partner Rags out at Texas A&M. Working together with the stakeholders, we came up with basically this same group of goals back in 2018. And they've shifted a little bit, but not much. It's how can we help students get more experiences? Because we have really good cyber programs, cybersecurity programs, cyber operations programs. You've got the academic piece available, but how do you make it relevant for careers in Department of Defense? Well, the only way you can do that is to give them experience, actual experience. And I'll talk about what we do for that, because this is not a scholarship program. We're not handing them money at the beginning and hoping it comes out okay, all right? This is, you're gonna get funded for every experience and opportunity, DoD focused, that you wanna take part in. And so some students go for the minimum, some, and I can name their names like this because I get all of the funding requests eventually at some point, whatever they wanna do, but it's gotta be DoD focused. And if you want to be in our program, you have to sign an agreement. It's not legally binding. We don't tell them that. But to get a student to sit down and to look at an agreement and say, I want to work for Department of Defense as civilian or military. To do that, I intend to be in the Cyber Leader Development Program. And I'll talk about the CLDP because it's more than just being technically focused. Okay? To work in DoD, we know what it takes. They have to understand the work roles. And so in their agreement, they agree that they're gonna look through the work roles and identify 2 or 3 that align with their academic program and dive into those and see what it takes to do that work role in Department of Defense. And then we're gonna give them opportunities, and I'll talk about what those opportunities are. So you're like, okay, this is great for 6 schools, right? It's a pilot project. And if we're successful, and we're now at that point where DoD is taking us down that program of record line for sustainable funding, this is a model. And we have 6 models, right? They're all Cyber Leader Development Program, but you've got Little Norwich, you know, yay, so I'm at Norwich now. Private military, oldest private military university in the US, home of ROTC. I've now done my Norwich thing. You've got small private school. You've got Texas A&M. You could fit all of Vermont down in Texas A&M's campus, right? You've got state schools, large schools, public schools, and private schools. 6 models, and we've proven it can work at all 6. Given that, now DoD CIO's next step is, what other schools should we then start seeding? Because we have a proven project, and it's with very little overhead. Very little overhead. It has to be within the existing structure, and you get 2 positions at each of the schools. You get a director, and you get an admin/ops. And then each school can decide to add more, but the qualification is always, and the money starts from Norwich, and then we sub-award out to the other 5 schools. The majority of the money always has to go to the students, not to everything else at the university, because you've got amazing cyber programs out there. So it's how do you get students experiences? So let's look at some of those. This is the Cyber Leader Development Program, and we push the we push the boundaries of how you define cyber starting back in 2018, 2019, and we've kept expanding it out. So DCWF will cover some of those, but we're hoping they'll catch up with us at some point. But it's not just cyber, right? It's all of those things. It's math, it's physics, and you heard when CJ was talking before, it really is about the interdisciplinary. That was the beginning, and that was the language we wrote, was this is not just cyber. Cyber doesn't exist just for cyber. It supports so many other things, and it enables so many other things. And we included critical language in there, because I'm retired SIGINT officer. Cryptolinguist, was my life. The ability to have someone who understands cybersecurity or cyber operations and understand not only the language but the culture of a potential adversary is powerful. These are unicorns. These are purple sparkly unicorns. If you can get somebody who understands cyber and understands critical foreign language, I will tell you that none of them are lacking for jobs. And in fact, at one point we were providing by name lists to NSA Georgia. You got any more of those? But it gives them the ability to think in a different way. And it's very powerful. And so we started to build experiences to foster that and to help those who are studying cyber, give them incentives. Hey, you might be studying German. Why don't you think about going for Chinese or Russian? And if you do, we're going to give you an incentive to study that. They all have to do DoD internships, and I'll show you what we do with those, because it's hard to get them. They're very competitive. But if we can help use our funding to provide funding and extend the ones that are already existing to say, okay, you've got a program, it's built for 20 interns, but if we give you the same quality of people, we think they're higher quality, but give you at least the same quality, and we will fund the travel, the lodging, the meals, and give them a stipend. You provide them the mentor and the experience. That's how we've been able to grow other opportunities to make sure every one of these students gets a DoD internship. Study groups, Cyber Leader Development Program. So some of the feedback every once in a while that you get when they go to career fairs, your students, is they're great technically. They wouldn't look me in the eye. They couldn't give me an experience where they'd ever worked on a team. They were kind of a jerk. That was one comment. I'm not sure what they'd do if they failed. So we specifically, deliberately put them in situations where they have to lead teams, they have to work on teams. We push them to fail, and we see what they do as far as a team to help get them back up. Because they have to be leaders. There aren't many of those jobs where they're just going to be operating by themselves. A lot of our students are in ROTC, and that's great because you get leadership opportunities. But what do civilian students get? And so we make sure they're the ones who lead our competition teams. They're the ones who plan our events. They're the ones who lead our clubs. And the club is integral because the club is also the social network that they have in the school. So when things get tough, they've got something to fall back on. And so the clubs and the study groups have been essential. So they have to be part of that. They have to take part in at least one competition per semester. They need to get at least one certification, minimum one certification per academic year. But this is all funded, right? And the certifications aren't the ones that are interesting to them. The certifications are the ones that are specifically aligned with one of the work roles that they identified in the DCWF. What foundational certification do I need? Not what's interesting. And if they get the first one, then we may give them a little latitude. We don't limit how many. It's up to the student. All right, but obviously behind all of this, I got to keep the grades up. All right. Research is one element. Research obviously is the focus, and there's some amazing students in Viceroy who shared their research. That's one aspect of our program, and I'll show you some of the research areas that our students do. I think if you're not working in higher ed right now, you'd be amazed what's going on at the undergraduate level for research. I couldn't hold it. I couldn't do it. I was a geology major. These students are doing amazing applied research, and that's our focus. And they're doing it based on DoD research questions. So if you're in a DoD organization and you want some free labor, come see me, because we are always looking for great projects to do. Something that can be accomplished within an academic year. And all we ask is that you provide a relevant, real problem and a mentor, so that we have someone to reach back. And even more important, same with these students who just briefed, is being able to share at the end what your research was and to get feedback from somebody in an organization who's actually going to use that information. And then, like I said, we put them all in leadership positions. So this is a snapshot of our class that just graduated. Just to give you an idea, we had 284 students amongst the 6 schools. If they're in the Cyber Leader Development Program, they are not in Viceroy because we all have limited resources, right, CJ? So we make sure we get as many students involved as possible. So the 2 schools that have both programs, you can't be in both, because we want to make sure as many students get the influence as possible. But you see that 31% are ROTC and 69 civilian. That was this year. The previous year it was flipped. There's not a quota, there's not an objective or a goal. It's whoever qualifies, and we have waiting lists at all 6 schools to get into these programs. It's the ones who want to be in the program, and I will tell you what, our GPA requirement is 2.8. I'm the champion of the 2.8 GPA, all right? I raised one, all right? I raised a 2.8 GPA, so I feel some love for that particular one, and now he's an Army captain in Intel, so he made it. Yeah, applaud him, not me. A lot of tutors. I spent a lot on tutors. When you want to go for an NSA internship, right, you better have a 4.0 as a minimum, and preferably 4.2, 4.3. GPA is one indicator. But sometimes there's that 2.8 out there who just needs a spark, right? They just need to be outside of that particular environment, working a real problem, to put it in context and to say, oh, now I understand why that was important in that class or that lab. And we've seen that over and over again, is if you give them the opportunities, rightly so in some case, but the opportunities go based on GPA. And yet, if you ask the people you work with, and they were honest with you, there's probably a lot of 2.8 GPAs out there at the undergrad level. These are students who are now sparked, and they come back, and by and large, not only do their GPAs, but their engagement at school goes up. And they get to graduation. Every one of these gets to graduation. And in higher ed, that does not always happen, right? So we want to get them there because we want them standing at your door, knocking on your door and saying, I have this qualification academically, but I have these experiences, very specific experiences. Let me go past that one. These are the experiences that we fund and that all of our students take part in. They all have to do outreach. They have to go out and talk and teach middle school and high school. Because we all know it's one thing to learn, it's another thing to teach. And if we can get our students out there, they're not only demonstrating what they know, they're put in a stressful environment, they have to communicate, and they usually fail the first time out, and then they come back. right? And they say, I want to do it again. And they not only go out and share their knowledge with students, we also have them out there sharing it with the teachers at middle school and high school and running weekend classes and seminars for non-cyber teachers out there who want to learn more. So the opportunity to get out there, exercises, there's a lot of great, amazing exercises out there. Not all of them are specifically cyber focused. We started 4 years ago threat casting. I did a lot of future concept stuff in the Army, and getting students to take a problem and try to project what the solution is. So we not only, again, bring cyber students in, but all of those other disciplines that you saw there focused on a DoD problem. Let's see, SOC, we have them working in SOC. 2 of the schools have security operations centers. So we have students who get SOC analyst certified as students. That's a nice thing to have walking out the door. Faculty development, we do the majority of our funding, right, for our students, but there's got to be someone who's teaching them, right? So we make sure that not only do our students understand DCWF and DoD organizations, but we get our faculty in those same situations and make sure that they understand and that they have opportunities to upskill. So they also get certifications, they also get to go to the competitions. We haven't really said no when they've asked us. If they can tie it to a DoD organization, then we'll send them. Obviously, we're updating our curriculum based on that, and 5 out of the 6 schools are CAEs. Norwich has been a CAE since 2001. We understand Department of Defense, and our faculty understand, and they respect it. And that won't necessarily be the case on every university you go to. Equipment, same thing. Let's get some of the latest and greatest equipment, not only in our cyber labs and our cyber ranges, but spectrum analyzers, so we can, bring in the electrical engineering folks, bring in the computer engineering folks, the physics and math, and let's talk about the electromagnetic spectrum and cyber problems. Again, as long as they tie it to a specific problem for DoD that they're trying to solve, we can support that. But we don't say, I don't sit on high. I'd like to some days, but I don't sit on high and tell everybody what to do, right? They say, okay, here's the Cyber Leader Development Program. We understand what we're supposed to do. We all have different cultures. We all have different academic programs. Within the framework, we're going to deliver this to our students. So 6 very effective models. Just a snapshot. I know it's an eye chart. The type of research that they do. We do an annual conference every year. Students, use Easy Chair. They present their proposals. They get selected from each of the 6 schools, and they present that not only to an audience of all 6 schools, students from all 6 schools, but also DoD representatives. My going in when I ask a DoD organization to send somebody is they get to see old people like me all the time. Could you send some, like, captains? Could you send some GS-11s, GG-11s? Send someone younger in the workforce so they can relate and ask those questions they want to ask about their careers, because it's a great recruiting opportunity. I will say this last one we had at VMI in April, we had 1 DoD rep because nobody could travel down to VMI. This is a tough year. When your program is about convincing students to go Department of Defense, cyber, military and civilian, because it's a stable workforce with lots of opportunities, it's been tough. But this is about teaching them resilience, and this too shall pass, right? Because a lot of us in here have been down this road, not quite the same road, but similar roads and rifts and everything else. Even if there's not a DoD job opportunity available, we have prepared these students because they have actual competencies. These are students who can demonstrate that they can do a task or tasks related to specific DoD work roles. They can talk it. They can give you the instance. They can tell you what the requirements were. They can tell you what the results were, what they failed on, and they can do that in a very competent, confident manner. If we arm them with that, they will be successful no matter where they go in the ecosystem. real quick. This is where they are this summer. DoD internships were falling like dominoes in the spring. It was ugly. And some of you are in those organizations where it's like we don't have the money, or we had a return to work policy, so we don't have seats available, which was the case with 2 of those. But the reason that we have our funding is to provide opportunities to students. We pulled our funding. We went to the DoD organizations as they started to drop, and they said, we don't have money. We said, okay, we'll fund it. We'll get them there, but you have to present the opportunity, the relevant problem, and a mentor. And so we ended up funding about 50 more than we had planned originally, but they're all sitting in those DoD internships right now. And I was hoping, like CJ, to bring a couple students in, but they are all sitting in those internships right now. Some of them right here at JHU APL. That's our one research internship. But as you can see, it goes across the spectrum. And then on the other side, there were actually 10 that did get funded, so I thought I should give them credit too. But this was because we had been sending students there for the last 4 or 5 years, and they understood the quality. And we either send them through the same pipeline as the rest of their interns, or in a lot of cases, we've developed parallel pipelines. And we've said, okay, give us your exact qualifications. We're going to screen them, and we're only going to send you the ones that meet your qualifications. And at this point, we haven't had any get turned back, and we haven't had any sent home. They're amazing students, and they want to work for DoD. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that happens. These were our graduates. We just graduated. Yay! It's always a happy day on campus when we graduate students. You can see 41% of this class that just graduated were cadets. We've been tracking. We track an amazing amount of metrics, and Mark Gorak talks metrics. He's the data scientist, but we've been collecting an amazing amount of metrics for the last now coming on 6 years. Why? Because started this program so it would look like a DoD program, not like a university grant. It's not a research grant. This is an actual program that we set up because we knew we had to show return on investment. Because every year I have to write a paper that ends up somewhere up in Congress, and they say, what'd you do with their money, Sharon? And say, here's what we did for your money. This is our return on investment this last year. Little lower than the previous years, but 41% of the students who graduate from our program are now working in or processing into DoD, IC, or federal civilian or military or uniformed service, because we have Coast Guard also, jobs in cyber. In past years, it's been 50, 54%. And we're not getting them their jobs. We're preparing them for the workforce. We're helping them understand the workforce. We're introducing them by giving them internships, competitions, exercises, certifications. They get the jobs. But they've also gotten those jobs because they've built relationships with all of you as they've gone into those opportunities. You'll see the uncommitted, and this is the information as of 15 April. Some of those are committed, and some of those CJO processing, they're not processing anymore. They were pulled, and that's a challenge. For us, that's a challenge because that's a trust broken. These are students who had job offers. These are also our graduates from the last 2 years who were probationary, who lost their jobs and positions, and they're talking to their friends back on campus. And so our job now is to build trust back up for the students. And we know we've got this to do, but we know we can because we're going to continue to prepare them. But all of those who had job offers pulled are in jobs now. And so if I came back in a month, I'll have the next metrics, quarterly metrics, and you can see that they actually have jobs. And they might be working in the defense industry, or they might be working private industry. But they understand Department of Defense. And that's something that they can always come back to. But they have a good memory of Department of Defense, with the exception maybe of that job offer getting withdrawn. So what do? I I tell a lot of people, at this point in my career, I only do what I like to do. I'm stubborn, I always have been, but I get up in the morning and I get to help students. And every one of the directors at the 6 schools, it's the same thing. We all have other jobs that we do also, but we get to impact students and we get to give them opportunities and we get to see where they end up. And there's not much more that's more meaningful than that. So my ask of all of you who are in Department of Defense organizations, I'd love some more challenges, some more problems that you'd like us to work on. I'd love you to come to our annual research event. I know some of you are coming to our summer camps. Up at Norwich, we're doing an information warfare exercise that we do with 10th Mountain. We're doing that with our students in 10th Mountain, information warfare, electromagnetic spectrum camp, open source intel camp. We'd love to have representatives from DoD at our camps and any of the SMC camps. So problems, we want jobs. So once it opens up again, our students want jobs, but we're not asking for that without proving it to you. So if you've got internship programs and you're limited by funding, some are, we might have a way that we can help support that and get our students in so that they can work in your organizations. So do I have time for a question?
You sure do. So first, I was at 2.8, and now I work at MIT. So I guess
yeah, there you go.
Which brings me to my first question. So MIT Lincoln Labs is a DoD FFRDC. Would that count as a DoD intern?
Yes, it does.
So why don't we have anybody there yet?
We haven't
I have tons of interns right now, and everything you're talking about we do, including like the SOCOM Ignite program. I mean, we run it essentially. So
we would love to. Sometimes it's just finding the right person to go in. Before the CAEO under Mark Gorak and the Chief Information Officer is a very new organization. We've been doing this 6 schools at a time, right? And we go to where we know and who we know and building that based on arts, which is why you see a lot of Army organizations because there are a lot of Army people. I would love that. We work with the national labs also, which wasn't reflected on there.
The other half of my split personality is Army Reserves. And my brigade, we're doubling in size, so we need to recruit. And it seems like this might be having a Guard and Reserve recruiting effort in there would be, if people that don't want to do full-time, still want to do it. So do you have
because you saw on the slide, you might see on the slide that we showed active duty there.
Everybody always pays attention to the active.
We don't though. Our lead on this is Colonel Linda Riddle. You might have seen her around here. She's the Citadel Deputy Director for their Cyber Institute. And Linda's taken the charge of that, but we each work within our states for the Guard, the 5 states represented. And with the Reserve, we work, Linda helps us break into that. So yeah, anybody who wants students who are graduating in the Guard and Reserve, about 40% of our graduates go Guard or Reserve who are in ROTC.
Hi, Barry Green, Norwich class of 88.
Woohoo! These are not plants, right? These are,
Didn't plan this.
I went down there twice.
Didn't even know that we had a Norwich presenter today, and this was a pleasant surprise. First a comment, then a question.
Okay.
The comment is we run a national cyber exercise specifically for Title 32 forces each year. And a fellow named Phil Sussman, who I ran into 2 years ago at another cyber conference that shall remain nameless, because this is clearly a better one, recommended that we add the SMCs to our Title 32 competition. You may know about this because subsequently I did invite the Commandant at Norwich at the time to have Norwich and the other SMCs compete. This was a serious competition in the sense that we had Army Air National Guard, we had State Guard personnel, people with PhDs in cyber and whatnot, duking it out for 4 hours in a national competition, 23 teams ranging from Alaska to South Carolina.
Right.
I'm here to tell you, and mind you, Phil had to talk me into it. It wasn't a long talk into it, but it said,
Knowing Phil, yeah.
involve the SMCs. When we did that, something interesting has happened in the last 2 years. Last year, which was the first year we did it, an SMC, unfortunately, was not Norwich, but
Working on
an
it.
SMC came in the top 3,
Yep.
which none of us saw happening.
Right.
One of the top 1 was an Army National Guard full-time cyber unit, and the number 3 at that time was a full-time State Guard unit. And yet somehow an SMC came in
Yep.
second, duking it out with folks that were all graduates, postgraduates, and so on.
Oh, yeah.
This past year, that same SMC won it.
Yep, I know. I know.
And beat out everybody.
Right.
Okay.
Which
But
SMC was it?
we have an OPSEC
Yeah,
commitment
yeah.
to our competitors.
We call Power of 6. We're all in it together.
We announce the states.
yeah.
We do not announce the individual teams nor their
But
specific affiliations.
It it sparked this amazing, because we also do Best Cyber Warrior. So when Linda was deployed, we ended up with students from 5 of the schools in USERA doing Best Cyber Warrior in Europe against international teams and ended up in the top 20%.
Sharon, this is to a certain extent an attaboy, so to speak, to you and your team and all of the other SMCs, and frankly, all of the rest of you that are in the academia. We have Ohio and a number of other
Towson.
represented here, is that understand what this means from those of us that are in cyber leadership. In looking at this, is we have undergraduates, these kids have not even graduated college yet,
Right.
competing in cyber defense exercises against professionals and winning.
Yep.
Which not only gives me hope in terms of just in a few years from now when I'm white-haired and drooling in the old cyber warriors home, that these kids are going to be taking care of me at that point because they'll all be majors and colonels and private sector and so on. But the other thing is, it gives everybody, hopefully here, a chance to think about something for a second, in that it says something about what's happening in the undergraduate training that's apparently ramping up the abilities of this next generation, and that some of us either have to go back to school or find better ways to integrate, as I've seen in the IT universe, the younger generation in more of a leadership role than other lanes have tended to be, where you earn your place up, you start in the mailroom. At one of my tech companies, I used to have interns, college interns, including some Norwich people, embedded with the think tank folks that were problem solving, because we found the younger people would come up with solutions faster using different methodologies that we had just not been exposed to. So first off, everybody needs to start thinking and looking at the Title 32 and the university universe as, when you talk about cyber and national defense, potential workers in that. The question I was going to ask you is, you seem to be running out of internships. Are there internships available yet, the operative word being yet, on the Title 32 spectrum? And if not, should we, on the leadership side, be working on that?
We're not running out of internships. We will fill any organization's interns that comes to us. And we've been coming to them. I'm on the road a lot. We've been coming out to them every opportunity I get, and I appreciate the MCPA opportunity to talk here. We want you to come to us and say, hey, what about us? Well, okay, let's talk. We have interns for you. Now, would I like some of these to be paid by the organizations? Yes, I would. And sometimes what we do is we make the agreement, and I won't say which organizations, we pay the first year, we prove it, you want that intern back the second year, you fund it. Because if they're coming back a second year, they're gonna come through your door. That's the NSA wonder of internships, right? Is they know with NSA internships, if they get them through the door, there's a really high chance, I think it's above 90%, that student's gonna apply. We want the same for your organization. But you got to give them a relevant, challenging opportunity. So CJ's standing up, so I got to get off the stage. I'd be glad to talk to anybody about this, but I appreciate your attention.